The Girl Who Knew My Name. It was a quiet evening. The sun had gone down, and the streetlights were just turning on. Ryan Carter was walking home after working late at the bookstore. His backpack hung over one shoulder, and his headphones played soft music in his ears. He liked walking alone. It helped him think. But that night was different. As he passed the old park near the edge of the city, something strange happened. The sky above him flickered like a broken light bulb. Then, without warning, a bright flash lit up the sky, so bright that Ryan had to cover his eyes. When he opened them, he froze. There was a glowing circle of blue light on the ground in front of him. Smoke rose from it like steam. And in the middle of that light, someone was standing. It was a girl, but not just any girl. She had silver hair that moved like it was alive. Her eyes glowed blue, like tiny stars. Her skin was pale, almost shining. She wore a black bodysuit that looked like armor, but it moved like cloth. She looked human, but not quite. Something about her felt off. Ryan took a step back. What the hell? The girl looked at him. Then she smiled. "There you are," she said softly. "I've been looking for you, husband." Ryan blinked. What? Before he could run, she walked toward him, calm and sure. Her eyes didn't leave his face. "Ryan Carter," she said. "Earthborn, age 23. Blood type O, favorite color green. You used to draw stars on your walls when you were 6. Ryan's heart began to race. "How do you know that?" She stopped just a few feet away. She looked at him like she knew him deeply, like she missed him. "I am Elira," she said. "I am your wife." Ryan laughed nervously. "Look, lady, I don't know who you are, but I think you're crazy." But then she lifted her hand. On her finger was a glowing ring, blue and silver, shaped like 2 galaxies spinning together. And then Ryan felt something warm on his own finger. He looked down. There was a matching ring on his hand. He hadn't been wearing it before. It just appeared. "What? Is this some trick?" he whispered. Elira shook her head slowly. "No trick. You promised me. You swore we'd meet again, even if time broke us apart." Ryan was shaking now. This has to be a dream. Or a prank. Or something. Just then, headlights flashed on the road. A car pulled up. 2 people inside saw Ryan and Elira. "Hey, you okay?" The driver called out. "Do you need help?" Elira turned fast, her eyes glowing brighter. She stepped in front of Ryan and raised her hand. A blue wall of light appeared between them and the car. The people inside screamed as the car's engine died and the windows cracked. "Stop!" Ryan shouted. They were just trying to help. Elira lowered her hand. The light faded. "I'm sorry," she said. "My duty is to protect you. Always." Ryan stared at her. He had so many questions. Was this a joke? A government test? An alien trap? "Why me?" he asked. "Why are you calling me your husband?" Elira stepped closer. Her voice was calm, but her eyes looked sad. "Because," she said, "you saved me once. Long ago. In another place. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to live. And you said, if I ever found Earth, I should find you." Ryan shook his head. "But I don't remember anything." She nodded. "I know. They took your memories to protect you. But I remember everything." She reached into her suit and pulled out a small metal cube. It glowed faintly. "This has the truth," she said. "About us. About the war. About your promise." He didn't take it. He couldn't. His hands were shaking. Before he could say more, a loud sound filled the air, like a giant machine powering up. Ryan looked up. Far above them, a black triangle-shaped ship was hovering. It had no lights, no windows, just a dark shape blocking the stars. Elira's eyes narrowed. "They found us," she whispered. Ryan turned to her, panic rising. "Who are they?" She didn't answer. She just grabbed his hand and said, Run, she says. We were married in another galaxy. The night sky was no longer quiet. The black triangle-shaped ship above them hummed like a sleeping giant waking up. It moved slowly, blocking the moon and stars, casting a huge shadow over the park. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. His legs were frozen, but Illyra was already pulling his hand. Run, she repeated, her voice sharp and full of warning. Ryan didn't think. He just followed her. They ran down the path, through the trees, their feet crunching on gravel and dead leaves. The light from the spaceship above followed them, like a giant eye searching the ground. It scanned the area with beams of pale light. "What is that?" Ryan shouted, panting. Illyra looked back only once. A hunter-class sentinel, sent to capture me. And now, you. Why me? I didn't do anything. You did. You just don't remember. They dashed out of the park and into a dark alley behind some old buildings. Illyra pressed her hand against a wall. Her fingertips glowed, and a small door slid open, right through the bricks. "What the? How did you?" "No time. Get in." They slipped inside. The door vanished behind them, like it was never there. Inside, it was cold and dim, the air smelling like metal and dust. Strange lights blinked on the walls, and alien symbols glowed softly. It wasn't Earth tech, not even close. Ryan turned to Illyra. His voice shook. "Okay. Stop. I need answers. Now." Illyra looked at him with soft eyes. "I owe you that. Sit." They sat on a small bench beside a glowing console. Ryan stared at her. She still looked unreal. Too perfect, too smooth, too not human. "You're not human, are you?" She shook her head. "No, I was born, or built, on a planet called Virel. I'm an android, but not just metal. I have feelings, memories. I feel pain. I cry, I laugh." Ryan swallowed hard. "And you're telling me I married you?" "Yes," she said quietly. "During the war." "What war?" Illyra touched the cube she showed earlier. It floated between them, projecting light. A 3D image appeared, a huge space battle. Ships flying, explosions, laser beams. In the middle of the chaos, a small ship flying alone. Fast, powerful. "That's your ship," she said. "You were a warrior. A rebel. You came to our planet to stop the android factories from building killing machines. But I was different. I was a healer unit. Not made for war. They wanted to destroy me too." Ryan watched the hologram. He saw a younger version of himself, older than now, but with the same face, pull Illyra from a burning lab. He was bleeding, but he smiled at her. "I saved you," Ryan whispered. "You did more than that," Illyra said. "You taught me what love was." He looked at her. "But I don't remember any of this. I work at a bookstore. I'm nobody." "That's not true," she said. "When you saved me, they took something from you. The High Council. They erased your memories, hid you on Earth, changed your life. But I remembered everything. And I swore I'd find you." Ryan looked down at his glowing ring. It was still there. Real. "I don't know what to believe," he whispered. Just then, a loud boom shook the room. Dust fell from the ceiling. The ship above had found them. "They're here," Illyra said. "We have to move." "No, I'm not running again. Tell me, what do they want from me?" Illyra looked at him sadly. "Your DNA. It's rare. 1 in a billion. You're not just human anymore. You're something more. You and I, we bonded during the rebellion. Our blood, our code, it merged. That's why they're hunting us." Ryan laughed bitterly. "So now I'm a science experiment." "No, you're my husband." Another explosion rocked the tunnel. Illyra stood and held out her hand. "We need to reach the ship." "What ship?" "The one you built. It's buried nearby." Ryan blinked. "Wait, I built a spaceship. Yes, you were brilliant, wild, brave. You called it the seraphim, and it only responds to your touch. Ryan hesitated. What if I still say no? Elira's face softened. Then I'll protect you, even if you hate me. I will die before I let them take you. He saw something real in her eyes. Not metal, not code. Emotion. Before he could answer, a loud crash came from above. The ceiling split open. A robot dropped through, a tall one, covered in armor. Red eyes scanned the room. Targeti acquired, it said in a deep, inhuman voice. Ryan backed up. What do we do? Elira stepped in front of him. Her arms shifted, transforming. Her hands became glowing blades. She whispered, "Stay behind me." And then she charged. The truth hidden in his blood. The Hunter-class robot charged like a tank, red eyes glowing, voice booming through the collapsing tunnel. Targeti Lockheed. Retry subgct. Elira didn't flinch. Her hands glowed brighter. With one swift motion, she slashed through the air. Blue energy shot out from her blades, striking the robot in the chest. Boom. Sparks flew as the robot stumbled back, but it wasn't down. Ryan stood frozen behind her, breathing hard, eyes wide. He'd never seen anything like this. Not in movies, not in dreams. This was real. Ryan, Elira shouted, "Get to the hatch behind you. Now." He turned. A part of the wall had opened, revealing a glowing ramp. He hesitated for only a second before running toward it. Behind him, Elira and the robot were locked in battle, metal against energy, speed against brute strength. Ryan ran through the tunnel, his legs burning, his mind spinning. Was he really just a normal guy? A bookstore worker? Or had his past been stolen? The tunnel ended at a wide underground chamber. At the center of the room stood something unbelievable. A spaceship. Sleek, silver, and beautiful. It looked like a bird, its wings folded close. Lights ran along its surface like veins. Ryan stood in awe. "Is this mine?" he whispered. The ship's ramp lowered slowly. A soft female voice echoed from the ship. "Welcome back, Captain Carter." Ryan stepped onto the ramp. The moment his foot touched the surface, the ship pulsed with light, like it recognized him. The door opened. Inside, the ship was alive. It didn't feel like metal and wires. It felt like a memory. Warm, familiar, like coming home. He walked into the cockpit. Screens turned on. A hologram of the galaxy rotated in the air. A seat rose from the floor, fitting perfectly to his size. Elira ran in seconds later, breathing hard. Her armor was cracked, and her cheek had a cut that leaked silver fluid, like tears of light. "The robot?" Ryan asked. "Gone," she said, sitting beside him. "For now." She looked at him. "The ship accepted you. That means your blood still holds the key." Ryan looked at his hands. "Tell me the truth. What's inside me?" Elira tapped on the console. A small needle popped out. "Just one drop," she said gently. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. The needle pricked his finger. A red drop of blood landed in a scanner. The screen lit up, flashing data in both English and an alien language. Symbols danced across the console. Then the ship's voice spoke again. "Human dual DNA confirmed. Neural code. Linked. Status. Commander-level access granted." Elira whispered, "You were never just human. After our bond, your DNA changed. You became more." Ryan stared at the screen. "Why me?" "Because you cared," she said. "When everyone else wanted to destroy androids, you listened. You saved me. And you helped lead others to peace. But I don't remember any of it." "You will," she said, "in time." Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. "Incoming vessels. 5. Hostile signatures." Elira stood. They followed us. Ryan got up too. Then let's run. But the ship's voice said, warp drive offline. Core recharge at 34%. They were trapped. Elira's eyes flicked to the storage room. There's a lab on board. I need to activate your old memories. It might give us the edge we need. Ryan backed up. What? No, you want to mess with my brain now. It's not brainwashing, she said. It's restoring what was stolen. It's your choice, Ryan. But right now, we're running out of time. He looked at the screen showing the enemy ships getting closer. He took a deep breath. Do it. Inside the memory lab. The room was quiet. Lights hummed around a tall, chair-like device. Ryan sat down, gripping the arms tightly. Elira stood beside him, holding a thin silver needle and a small glowing orb. This won't hurt, but it may feel strange. She touched the needle to the back of his neck. In seconds, everything changed. Inside Ryan's mind, he saw flashes, explosions, stars, Elira crying, him holding her, a wedding in zero gravity, vows spoken in a language he didn't recognize, a war, running, hiding, kissing her under 2 moons. He gasped. Then he saw a council chamber, men in robes, his voice yelling, "She's not a machine. She's more human than you." Then, darkness, a machine erasing his memories, Elira screaming, his body falling into a deep sleep, a whisper in his ear. "I'll find you again, I promise." Back in reality, Ryan woke with a jolt. His heart was racing. His hands were shaking. Elira was holding his hand. "You saw it, didn't you?" He nodded slowly. "I saw. Us. You believe me now?" He looked at her. "I don't know what to believe, but I remember. Pieces." Suddenly, a red light flashed on the screen. Boarding party incoming. 60 seconds. Ryan stood up, and something inside him felt different. Stronger. Braver. Like the old version of him was waking up. He walked to the console and pressed a button. Ship. Arm defenses. Defensive systems online. Elira smiled. "Welcome back, Commander." He turned to her. "Let's give them a reason to fear humans again." Escape to the stars. The floor trembled beneath their feet. "Boarding party has entered lower hull," the ship's voice announced. Ryan looked at Elira. "They're inside." She nodded. "Then we don't have much time. We have to get off this planet now." The lights above flickered as the ship took another hit. From the corner of the control room, sparks flew from a damaged panel. Ryan rushed to the main console. "How long until the warp drive is ready?" "Core recharge at 59%, the voice responded. "Minimum required, 60%. Elira narrowed her eyes. "We can make it." Ryan's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "What if we can't?" She turned to him, calm but fierce. "Then we make sure they don't leave either." Behind them, a sharp hiss filled the air. The inner door to the ship groaned, then started to melt. Something was cutting through it. "They're coming," Ryan said. Elira held up her arm. Her hand morphed into a plasma cannon. Ryan blinked. "You never told me you could do that." "You didn't ask." The door burst open. 3 armored figures stormed in. They weren't human. They were tall, insect-like creatures with glowing red armor and metal claws. Their eyes locked on Ryan. "Subject acquired. Eliminate the android. Capture the hybrid." "Hybrid," Ryan muttered. "No time." Elira shouted. She fired first. A blast of blue energy hit the nearest alien, sending it flying into the wall. The second leaped at her, but Ryan grabbed a pipe and swung hard, knocking it off balance. The third lunged straight at him. But this time, something inside Ryan awakened. He didn't think. His body moved on its own. He ducked, rolled, and drove his elbow into the alien's chest. A hidden blade popped from his sleeve. He didn't even know it was there, and stabbed the creature. It screeched and fell. He stood up, panting. What? What did I just do? Elira looked at him, impressed. Your combat instincts are returning. You were trained to fight. I work at a bookstore. Not anymore. Minutes later, the launch. Ryan and Elira sealed the doors behind them. Smoke filled the hall. The aliens were still pounding from the outside. Ryan jumped into the pilot's seat. I don't know how to fly this thing. You do, Elira said. Trust yourself. He grabbed the controls. The ship rumbled. The screen showed rising energy levels. Warp core at 61%. Jump ready. Ryan's hands flew across the console like they had done it 1,000 times before. I remember this, kind of, he said. The ground cracked as the ship powered up. Outside, Earth forces were scrambling. Fighter jets flew overhead. Military scanners locked onto them. Unknown object launching from underground. Repeat, object is airborne. Inside the ship, lights turned green. Let's go, Ryan whispered. He hit the ignition. With a deafening roar, the ship exploded from the hidden tunnel beneath the city. Dust and fire shot into the air as the Seraphim broke free. Ryan gritted his teeth as the ship climbed higher. G-forces pushed him into the seat, but his grip stayed firm. Jets followed them. Earth jets on our tail, Elira said. Do not fire. They don't know the truth. I'm not here to hurt anyone. But they will. The chase through orbit. The ship burst into Earth's upper atmosphere. The sky turned dark. Stars appeared, but the danger wasn't over. Behind them, the enemy ships, small, fast fighters, emerged from the mothership. 5 bogies approaching, locking weapons. Elira grabbed the co-pilot controls. Evasive maneuvers. Ryan spun the ship left. Lasers flew past. One grazed the wing. The ship shook. I'm trying to fly, but they're faster. Not smarter. She tapped a button. A glowing trail of energy formed behind them. A decoy signal. The enemy fighters split up. 2 followed the fake trail. Nice, Ryan said. What now? Go to the dark side of the moon. We can hide in the shadows. Let the warp core recharge. He angled the ship and dived toward the moon. But then, the ship's console beeped. Incoming transmission. Encrypted. From unknown source. Ryan looked at Elira. Another trap. She frowned. Play it. The screen lit up. A blurry figure appeared, a hooded man. His voice was rough. Ryan Carter. If you're seeing this, you escaped. Good, but your journey is just beginning. They lied to you. She lied to you. Ryan's eyes narrowed. Who is this? The man continued. She didn't just erase your memories to protect you. She erased them, to keep you hers. The screen glitched. Elira stood still. Ryan turned to her. Who is that? No idea, she said quickly. He looked at her harder. Are you sure? She didn't answer right away. The ship's voice cut in. Energy spike detected. Incoming missile. Ryan pulled up. The ship tilted hard. Boom. The missile exploded behind them, missing by inches. In the shadows of the moon. They finally reached the dark side of the moon. The enemy lost their signal. The ship slowed to a stop, floating quietly in the cold dark. Ryan leaned back. That was close. Elira nodded. Too close. He looked at her. Tell me the truth, Elira. Did you change my memories for love? Or control? She stared at him. I wanted you back. You were taken from me. I did what I had to. I just wanted us again. Ryan felt a storm inside him. Part of him remembered the love. The other part remembered the fear. I don't know if I can trust you, he said. I understand, she whispered. They sat in silence. The last surprise. Just then, the ship's console blinked again. Another message. This time, from Ryan himself. It was an old recording. his voice, slightly older, more tired. "Ryan, if you're hearing this, then I failed. I trusted Elira. I loved her. But she made a choice. She erased too much." The video. Ryan looked straight into the camera. "You'll want to believe her, but remember who you are first." The screen went dark. Ryan looked at Elira. She didn't speak. He stood up. "No more running." She nodded. "Then let's find the truth. Together." The Rebel Queen's secret. The silence of the dark side of the moon was like nothing Ryan had ever felt. No noise. No signal. No earth. No stars. Just shadows. And questions. Inside the ship, Ryan stood motionless. The last message, his own voice from the past, still echoed in his mind. "You'll want to believe her, but remember who you are first." He turned slowly toward Elira. She was standing near the console, her face unreadable. Her glowing eyes were dimmer than usual, like she was trying to hide something. "Say something," Ryan said. Elira looked down. "I didn't know you left that message." "But it's true, isn't it?" he asked, his voice hardening. "You erased my memories, not just to protect me, but to make me love you again." Elira stepped forward. "I only wanted to bring you back. They told me you were gone forever, that you'd never wake up. I couldn't lose you." "You already had," he said quietly. Her face twisted with sadness. "I did what I thought was right. But you didn't give me a choice." She reached out, but he stepped back. "I want answers," Ryan said. "The truth. All of it. No more lies." Elira nodded slowly. "Then we have to go to Lunaris Station. The rebels you once fought beside are hiding there. If anyone knows what happened to us, it's them." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "You said they were all dead." She hesitated. "They were supposed to be." Arrival at Lunaris Station. Lunaris Station was built inside a hollow moon orbiting a dead planet. It didn't show on any maps. Hidden behind asteroid belts and cloaked in stealth tech, it was the perfect hiding place for exiles, rebels, and ghosts of a forgotten war. As the Seraphim approached, its lights dimmed. The moon slowly opened, metal doors splitting like an eye. Ryan watched in silence as they entered the hidden base. The landing was rough. The hangar looked damaged, old, and patched together from stolen tech. As the ramp lowered, Ryan felt a strange chill. 3 figures walked toward the ship. All were wearing armor, scratched and mismatched, and carried strange weapons. But their leader was tall, calm, and didn't draw his weapon. He took off his helmet. He looked human. And old. Very old. "Ryan Carter," the man said with a dry smile. "So, you finally came home." Ryan squinted. "Do I know you?" The man nodded. "You did. On Commander Vex. You saved my life once. Before she changed you." He looked at Elira with clear distrust. "I see your queen still walks beside you." "She's not my queen," Ryan said. Vex laughed softly. "Not anymore." The rebel truth. Inside the base, Ryan sat in a room that looked like an old war room. Maps of galaxies, broken weapons, flickering lights. Everything smelled like rust and secrets. Commander Vex stood in front of a screen. He pressed a button. A video began to play. It showed Elira, standing in front of a crowd of androids and aliens. Her voice was calm, her face emotionless. "The rebellion has failed. The only way to survive is control. All memory must be reset. All rebels must be reprogrammed. The human, Ryan Carter, will be erased. Love is no longer needed." Ryan felt cold. He turned to Elira. "Is this real?" She looked away. "I change," she whispered. "After you were captured. After I thought you died." Vex stepped closer. She led the purge. She didn't just erase memories. She controlled minds, including yours. Ryan stood up, trembling with anger. "So you were the villain, not the victim." "No," Elira said quickly. I was broken. I was scared. You don't understand what losing you did to me. You used to believe in freedom, Ryan said. What happened to you? Elira's eyes shimmered with silver tears. I believed in you. And when you were gone, I believed in nothing. There was silence. Vex tossed a small metal disc on the table. This is your full memory file, Ryan. Taken before she wiped you. If you want to remember everything, use it. But be warned. The truth will hurt. Ryan picked up the disc. I need time, he said. The choice. Later, alone in a quiet room, Ryan stared at the disc. He could plug it in, get all his memories back, finally know who he really was, what he believed, what Elira truly meant to him. But he was afraid. Afraid of remembering things he couldn't forget. He looked at the glowing ring on his finger. He whispered, "Who was I? Really?" Then he pressed the disc into his temple. Memory flood. Pain hit him first, then flashes. Him and Elira, side by side, fighting a war together, laughing, bleeding, kissing. A wedding, under falling stardust. Vows whispered in a forgotten language, her voice promising forever. Then the day it ended. Captured, betrayed, and Elira standing with the enemy, cold, distant, different, him screaming her name, her saying, "You are not needed anymore." Then blackness. Returned to the present. Ryan opened his eyes, sweating. He remembered everything now. His love, her betrayal, and something else. A message, a plan, a secret mission they had created together before she changed. He rushed to Elira. She looked up. You remembered. He nodded. Everything. Then you know why I did it. He paused. Yes, but that doesn't make it right. Her voice cracked. I never wanted to become a monster. You didn't have to, he said. You chose to. But he looked at her with pain in his eyes. You also chose to come back for me. She whispered. I didn't lie about that. The final revelation. Commander Vex returned. There's one more thing you should know, he said. The council who erased your memories, they're coming. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Why? Because you and Elira are the only ones left who can stop their control signal from reaching the rest of the galaxy. Ryan looked at Elira. So, it's not just about us anymore. She nodded. It never was. Ryan turned to Vex. Prepare the ship. We leave at dawn. The final choice. The rebel base was no longer silent. Warning lights flashed in every corridor. Voices shouted through comms. Ships powered up. Soldiers ran with weapons in hand. The council was coming. Ryan stood in the center of the war room, staring at a glowing map of the galaxy. Red dots moved fast. Enemy ships heading straight toward Lunar Station. They had hours, maybe less. Commander Vex leaned on the table, face hard. We don't have enough ships to fight them. Then we don't fight, Ryan said. We end it another way. Vex looked at him. What are you thinking? Ryan glanced at Elira, who stood quietly near the wall. She hadn't said much since his memories returned. There's a signal, Ryan said. The one that controls android minds. The council uses it to force loyalty, to erase rebellion. That signal is sent through an ancient AI core, deep inside the council's flagship. And, Vex asked. I remember, Ryan continued. Elira and I, we made a backdoor key. A code that could disable the core. We just never got the chance to use it. Elira spoke finally. Her voice was low. That code is still inside me. Vex narrowed his eyes. Wait, you mean your body? She nodded. My neural system carries the code. I was designed that way. A living override key. Ryan looked at her. Which means, if we get her on that ship, she can stop the signal. Vex finished. Shut it down. Free every android. But there's a catch, Elira said. Ryan already knew. She looked at him with pain in her glowing eyes. Once the code is used, I won't survive it. The room went silent. The impossible plan. Hours later, the plan was laid out. Ryan and Elira would fly the Seraphim straight into the Council's fleet, under heavy fire, through shields, past death. They had one shot. Vex tried to stop him. We can send someone else. Ryan shook his head. It has to be us. The ship is coded to my DNA, and the code is in her. You could die, Vex said. Everyone will die if we don't. Elira stood beside Ryan. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with quiet sadness. I was built to serve, she said softly. But you made me want to live, to feel. If this is how I end, then I choose it. Ryan touched her hand gently. There has to be another way. She smiled. Sometimes love means letting go. The final flight. The Seraphim roared through space one last time. Its silver body reflected the stars as it passed the rebel line and headed toward the Council fleet. Giant ships shaped like thrones loomed ahead, their weapons powered up. Dozens of red lasers locked onto Ryan's ship. Warning: shields at 80%. Incoming fire. Ryan dodged, weaved, rolled. Inside, Elira sat silently beside him. Her eyes were closed, as if preparing for something far away. Are you okay? Ryan asked. I'm remembering, she whispered. The first time I saw you, you smiled at me. No one had ever smiled at me before. Ryan smiled now. I was probably scared. No, she said. You were brave. That's why I loved you. The enemy within. They broke through the outer defense. The Council ship towered ahead, miles long, black as night, glowing with blue veins of energy. It looked like a sleeping god. Ryan flew toward the hangar. Brace yourself. The ship crashed through the hangar doors, metal screeching, fire erupting. The Seraphim skidded to a halt, sparks flying everywhere. They jumped out. Inside the ship, guards waited, tall, armored, weapons drawn. But they didn't fire. They stared at Elira. One of them dropped to his knee. My queen. She raised her head. I am not your queen anymore. They parted. She and Ryan ran deeper into the ship, past long halls, echoing chambers, strange alien statues. Finally, they reached the core room. A massive machine stood in the center, floating cables, glowing wires, a pulsing orb of white light. Elira stepped forward. This is it, she said. Once I connect, the code will spread. It will crash the control system, free everyone, and kill you, Ryan said quietly. She nodded. I was always meant to die in a war. At least this time, I get to choose how. Ryan stepped forward. No, Ryan, there has to be a way to transfer the code. Put it in me. Use me instead. It won't work, she said gently. Your mind isn't designed for it. It would tear you apart. Ryan reached for her hand. I don't want to lose you again. She looked at him, smiling through tears. You won't. I'll be in every star you see, every song you hear, every moment you feel alive. Because you gave me life. She turned and walked into the core. The light grew brighter. Her body began to glow. Ryan shouted, Elira. She looked back one last time. I love you. Then she closed her eyes and connected. The collapse. The core shook violently. The cables lit up, then snapped. The control system screamed like a dying beast. All over the galaxy, androids stopped in place, then blinked and woke up. Free. Ships powered down. Weapons dropped. Screams turned to silence. Back in the core room, Ryan rushed forward. Elira was lying still, her body dim, her eyes closed. He dropped to his knees beside her. Elira, please. But she didn't move. Tears filled his eyes. He held her close for one final time. The voice in the ship. Later, Ryan flew back alone. The Seraphim was silent. But as he touched the console, a soft voice spoke. "Hello, Ryan." It was her voice. Elira. He looked up. A glowing image appeared, a hologram of her face. "You didn't think I'd leave you completely, did you?" she said, smiling. His heart leaped. "I stored a part of my code inside the ship," she explained. "Not alive, not fully, but here, with you." He laughed, crying. "You always had a backup plan." "I learned from the best," she said. The hero returns. When Ryan returned to the rebel base, the galaxy had already changed. Androids across planets were waking up, thinking for themselves. The council was falling. The war was over. And Ryan Carter, the human who fell in love with an android girl, became a legend. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the smartest, but because when the time came, he made the final choice, the human king. The galaxy was quiet. For the first time in 100 years, no one was fighting. No ships were chasing. No orders were being barked over war frequencies. The control signal was gone. The chains had been broken. And Ryan Carter was alone. Or so he thought. 1 week later, Lunaris Station. Ryan stood in front of a large window in the rebel base, watching a distant planet spin slowly beneath him. His eyes were tired. His face older somehow, not by years, but by memories. Behind him, the room was filled with voices, rebel leaders, androids, human ambassadors. They all wanted something from him. But Ryan wasn't listening. His hand was resting on the console where Elira's hologram had last appeared. He pressed a small button. A soft blue light formed in the air. Her face, her smile. "Hello, Ryan," the hologram said, still watching the stars. He smiled. Always. She couldn't hear him. It was only a recording, a piece of her. But it helped. The offer. The door slid open behind him. Commander Vex walked in, his steps heavy. "We need you in the council room," Vex said. "They're waiting." Ryan turned. "Why?" "I did what I had to. It's over." Vex shook his head. "For you, maybe. Not for them." Ryan followed Vex down a long hallway. The base looked different now, less like a bunker, more like a capital. Flags had been hung. The floors were polished. Even the soldiers stood straighter when they saw Ryan. When he entered the council room, all eyes turned to him. A tall android woman in silver robes stood. "Ryan Carter," she said, "you are the only being, human or machine, to have fought both sides and still been chosen by both. You freed our minds. You stopped a war." Another leader, a human general, nodded. "You were once nobody. Now you are the bridge between worlds." They both said it at once. "We want you to lead us." Ryan froze. "Lead?" "Yes," the android replied. "Not as a soldier, not even as a commander. As our king. The weight of the crown." Later that night, Ryan sat alone again. King. It felt wrong. He never asked for power. He never wanted a throne. He wanted a quiet life. Books, coffee, maybe a dog. But he also knew the truth. If he said no, someone else might take power and misuse it. If he said yes, he could protect what Elira died for. He looked at her ring on his finger. "What would you say?" he whispered. As if on cue, her voice came from the ship. "Ryan, if you're hearing this, it means they've asked you to lead." He froze. The hologram appeared again, different this time. Not a recording. A message saved for this moment. "You always ran from titles," Elira's image said softly. "But you never ran from people. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you worthy." Ryan swallowed hard. His chest ached. "I know you're afraid," she said. "I was too. But I believe in you. I always have. If they call you king, be the kind of king who never forgets what it feels like to be small." The message faded. He sat in the silence, then nodded. The coronation. The ceremony was simple. Ryan stood in the great hall of Lunara Station, not in armor, but in a dark cloak. Soldiers, rebels, androids, and humans stood side by side. An old android placed a silver crown on his head, not a heavy one, not flashy, just a symbol. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just looked at the people and said only one thing: no more chains for anyone. The hall erupted in cheers, and Ryan Carter, the boy from Earth, the forgotten soldier, the man who loved an android, became the human king. Peace, or something else. Weeks passed. New cities were built, peace treaties signed. Androids learned freedom. Humans learned forgiveness. For once, the stars were quiet. But Ryan never stopped watching. One night, he stood on the observation deck of his palace, alone again, until a voice spoke behind him. King Carter. He turned. It was an android messenger, young, nervous. There's something you need to see. The message from the edge. They took Ryan to the signal chamber. On a large screen was a small flickering signal, barely there, weak, but growing. It's a distress call, the technician explained. From deep space, outside known systems. Ryan leaned forward. The signal played. A weak, static-filled voice spoke. But the words were clear. This is Unit 017, Guardian Class. Calling Central Command. Hostile signal reactivating. They're not gone. Repeat. They're not gone. Ryan stared. Vex entered the room, reading the signal. That unit. It's from the Council's Outer Rim Guard. They were guarding something. Something even we didn't know. Ryan whispered. A backup system. Vex nodded slowly. Or worse, a second signal. One that didn't need a Lyra to activate. Ryan's face hardened. The peace was temporary. The final words. Later, Ryan sat in his quarters. The crown was on the table beside him. He recorded a message for the people, for the galaxy. His voice was calm, steady. We thought the war was over. We thought freedom had finally come. But freedom is not a gift. It's a fire that must be protected. Always. I do not know what waits beyond that signal, but I will go. And if needed, I will fight again. Not as a king, not as a hero, just as Ryan, a human. Final scene. The stars wait again. Ryan stood at the ramp of the Seraphim once more. The ship hummed softly. And as he stepped inside, the voice of Lyra echoed through the hallway. Shall we fly again, my love? He smiled. Yes, he whispered. Let's fly. The ramp closed. The engines roared. And the ship soared into the stars, toward the unknown. Toward the next chapter.